Hi, welcome back to my YouTube channel. By now you all know me, but if not, my name's Mario. I put out videos primarily on clinical research, on occasion on personal finance, and one day I hope to put out some travel videos. In today's video, I'm going to talk about one of the most commonly asked questions I get from newer CRAs, and that is how to deal with problematic sites. This video is not going to be completely encompassing on the subject. I'm going to put out future videos, primarily because there's a ton to say on this topic. This video is just going to highlight the 5 main reasons that sites may be problematic. To deal with a problematic site, you really need to understand the root cause, and you also need to know how to effectively communicate with sites. And on the topic of effective communication, my last YouTube video was titled How to Effectively Communicate with Sites, and I recommend watching that before you watch this video. All right, so before I jump into the reasons sites may be problematic, I want to remind you to please smash that like button and subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. Also, these 5 reasons that I'll outline go from the easiest to address to the most challenging to address. So reason number 1 is that the study coordinator is brand new to research. Now, I know what you're thinking. Have I gone nuts? A new study coordinator to research, an easy thing to address? Well, it's relative. It's not super easy to address, but it's one of the easier situations you can encounter from a problematic site. And the reason I say this is most study coordinators that are new are highly motivated to work. They just lack the knowledge base. And as a CRA, you should be able to train people on how to do things in clinical research. So for a site that has a brand new study coordinator, just make sure you are setting up times to talk to them, make sure that they understand the basics of research, make sure you're on top of everything that they enter into an EDC system in terms of data entry. Also, make sure you're collecting regulatory documents in real time and QC all these documents to make sure that nothing is out of whack. So that's what I would do for a brand new study coordinator. You may not know you're dealing with a brand new study coordinator off the bat, but you'll see some telltale signs that you're dealing with a new study coordinator, especially someone that's new to research. One of these telltale signs is the use of whiteout to make corrections. For those of you that don't know, the use of whiteout in clinical research, with one exception, is strictly prohibited. So we don't allow whiteout in order to make corrections. The one time you can use whiteout is to redact personal health information. So if you're redacting PHI, you can use whiteout. Other than that, there is no scenario where you can use whiteout. So how do you make corrections in clinical research? You draw one line through whatever error you made, you initial, you date, and if not self-explanatory, you write down why that correction is being made. So that is how you make corrections in clinical research, and that's an example of when you know you're dealing with a brand new study coordinator. You get documents that have either whiteout or their corrections are scribbled through. This is just one example. There are many other telltale signs you're dealing with a new study coordinator. All right, so on to number 2. Number 2 is high workload and understaffing at the site. This is something you'll encounter a lot. And these are generally study coordinators that know what they're doing. However, they just have too much work. Unfortunately, this is common throughout the industry. So you will deal with sites that know what they're doing, but they don't have the time to actually do the job correctly or to even attempt to do the job. Now, as a CRA dealing with such sites, the key to this is being able to write out task lists as you would a triage list at an emergency room. So for those of you that aren't familiar with triage in an emergency room, you want to make sure you take the most urgent, life-threatening situations first, and then you try to determine what can wait. So the site that's chronically understaffed is not going to get to everything and address everything perfectly. So you want to make sure they have a list from you with the highest priority to the lowest priority. The other thing that you can do as a CRA is you can start asking them, hey, what other database locks do you have coming up? What days are they coming up on? Are there certain days that are better to call you? Are there days where it's easier to get a response from you? Really try to understand that the site has limited time and how to effectively use your time with the site. This is key to success with this type of site. All right, so on to number 3. So number 3 is going to be sites with high turnover. This is more challenging than the first two, where you're dealing with just a new study coordinator or a site that's understaffed. Oftentimes, the sites that are experiencing high turnover not only have those two elements, but they also have another element that is resulting in the high turnover. So you'll see a lot of new study coordinators coming and going. You'll see chronic understaffing because of all the turnover. And then you really want to try and dig into why staff are leaving. So one of the great things to do, if you can and have the opportunity, is if you know someone's leaving, just ask what makes you leave the site. Is there anything wrong? Is there anything I should be aware of? They might tell you there's a toxic work culture. They might tell you that the PI is rude. You just want to get some insight to why there's high turnover. And for sites like this, you can actually help them by understanding this, because oftentimes sites just say, hey, we have high turnover. And I'm always surprised that they don't spend a lot more time digging into the reason for the high turnover, because it's a lot of resources to keep training and retraining new people and have people in and out. And it's also not appealing to sponsors to have study coordinators constantly leaving. So if I were presenting a new study, a site with high staff turnover is not one that I'd favor for a new study. All right. The reason this isn't the most challenging situation to address is because I think this can be addressed with getting a full understanding of that underlying reason why site staff are leaving and there's high turnover. And once you get to that core reason, you can address it. And this might take conversing with the PI, having an open discussion. These conversations can get uncomfortable because you, as the CRA, may need to talk about the work culture at the workplace, and it's not really your place to do it. But I like to present it as, hey, I just want to bring some things to your attention. If we can work together on this issue, if I can help in any way, let me know. And I feel that some of your staff has turned over more frequently. Do you have an inkling of why this may be? Is there anything I can do to help? Can we put more resources to train? Just make sure you have an open dialogue with the PI. But just remember, it's their site. It's not really your place to make these corrections, but you can understand them, and that'll help you do your job. All right, so on to the final and most difficult situation to address. And I want to say this is applicable to both the study coordinator and to the CRA, and it could be on either end. But the hardest situation by far to address is incompetence. You may have an incompetent study coordinator. You may have an incompetent monitor. You may have incompetence on both ends. So the reason that this is so hard to address is because oftentimes it's not addressed at all. If you have an incompetent CRA and an incompetent study coordinator, nobody knows what to do or the right way to do things, or they're not doing things the right way, even though they know how to do them. And you're often coming after these people and trying to correct things. So this is by far the hardest situation to address. And I've encountered this a few times coming behind other CRAs or seeing different study coordinators at sites. So I'll give you an example of both. So first, let me start on the CRA end. I have two examples of this, so I'll briefly go over both of them. In the first example, I was asked to take over a site, and the CRA was leaving the CRO that I joined, and I was picked as one of the new people with experience to go and help the site. It had been flagged as a possible site with problems based on data management review of data and possible deviations, etc. Now, one of the funny things about this particular situation is I had reached out to this monitor who ended up resigning when I had started with the CRO. And I said, hey, I'm brand new. I don't have that many site visits or that much work. Is there anywhere that you need help? I can go on my own. I can go with you. Is there some place where I could be of use? And I got a response saying, hey, no, there's no place you can go. All my work is current. It's up to date. There's nothing you can do. Thank you for offering. So, much to my surprise, when I went to the site where I was told everything was perfect, turns out everything wasn't perfect. And actually, it was not only not perfect, it was actually bad. Um, and there were many, many examples from the site of things just being done wrong, both by the study coordinator and the CRA that just didn't really do their job. Now, this is a site that was plagued with high turnover and also a combination with an incompetent CRA. So it was a challenging site to go to, and my favorite moment, and this is one of my most memorable moments, like favorite in a bad way, but favorite in a memorable way, was I went through all the monitoring reports and I noticed that investigational product had never been reviewed. And I found that odd. Like, basically, it said there was adequate IP on site, that there's adequate uh, everything for investigational product. But I was like, okay, it's weird. The checkbox is checked to say IP accountability was completed, but it's not listing things that I would expect to see in a monitoring visit report. For example, bottles destroyed, number of different bottles destroyed, or some of the detailed information I'd expect to see in a well-written monitoring visit report. And if you don't know how to write a monitoring visit report well, I have a video on that too. So I'm just going to plug that video here for a second. But I went through the reports and I was like, well, this is odd. There's something wrong with the way investigational product accountability is being done. So when I went to the site, I was like, let's start with investigational product accountability. So I asked them to bring me the inventory of drug, and everything checked out for inventory and it looked good. And then I asked, hey, what about returns? And they're like, we can't bring you the returns. And I'm like, that's an odd statement. I've never heard that from a site where they have returned drug and they can't bring it to me. And they're like, no, we can't bring it to you, but you can come with us. And I was like, okay, this is odd. Why can't you just bring me the few returned vials so I can account for them and we can move on with our life? And then I walk with the study coordinator and they take me to this gigantic closet. And I open the closet and literally the vials start falling off the shelves onto me, like, because this closet is completely stuffed. And I am completely dumbfounded because it turns out that was all our returned IP and no one had ever asked for it and they were just shoveling it into a closet. So there were hundreds of returned vials. So just for context, this particular study required 3 drugs be given. There were 3 oral pills and they were refilled every 28 days. The site had 20 plus subjects, so you can multiply and try to figure out how many vials were returned, but hundreds of vials just fell on top of me. And I was thinking to myself, this person said they needed absolutely no help in this site in any way. This is odd because there are hundreds of returned vials and I could have easily come and helped with drug accountability. Now, this is a lesson in multiple ways. One is don't be that CRA that doesn't do your job. 2, know when to ask for help. And in this case, it was me actually reaching out to the CRA saying, hey, I'm available to help. Is there anything I could do? And then I talked to the site about the old CRA, and I learned that they did not have a very good relationship. The CRA started showing up at 11 a.m. He'd go out to lunch for an hour. He'd leave by 2. And there was just a toxic culture between the site and that particular CRA, and it just didn't go well. So that was one example. The other example is much quicker. The other example was me showing up to a site for the first time with a quality assurance person. The site was scheduled for a quality audit. And the site had unique challenges. The site had a primary study coordinator, that went out on maternity leave much earlier than expected, and they hadn't gotten their act together to have a backup, etc. So things were in a mess from that perspective, and that the study coordinator suddenly went out on maternity leave. There was no one trained to fill in that role. A few people tried, but they weren't really trained study coordinators, so there were challenges there. But the reason I bring up that is the quality assurance person, rather than taking the approach of trying to understand what was really going on at the site, met with the PI and just started yelling. And I was there thinking, this is my first time at the site. This is just going to be bad. But the quality assurance person and the PI went to a yelling match for an hour. And I was just sitting there, and it's like, well, they're yelling at each other. And it was just me and the study coordinator sitting there super uncomfortably as these two people yelled back and forth. And I don't think that's helpful to anybody. I mean, you can yell all you want, but at the end of the day, you need to understand the root cause of the issue. So if you can do that, you'll be much more effective at your job than just getting into a shouting match between the your side and the PI and site side. You don't want this to be a match of that nature. So I'm going to end this with incompetence on the study coordinator side. One of the things that I encounter pretty often is study coordinators that should have retired. And I say this in the best light possible, but there are definitely study coordinators out there that have just been there too long, and it becomes a little bit evident. They know what needs to be done, they just don't do it. They're not very responsive. They've sort of already checked out mentally. They've retired, but they're still there, and you'll see this. So this is a different form of incompetence in the sense that they know what needs to be done, they're just not doing it. I have an example from a site where I've shown up and the study coordinator was present, just didn't do anything I asked. So that is one type of incompetence, or sites just making constant mistakes, no matter how much you retrain them, and you keep seeing the same mistakes over and over again. Like I said, incompetence is the hardest thing to deal with, and that takes the most experience. So if you're a newer CRA and you're dealing with incompetence at the site level, reach out to other CRAs and ask them how they've gone about approaching it. And in this particular case, more so than any of the others I mentioned, escalate, escalate, escalate. Make sure that the PI is aware, that every person on your study team is aware, and really just try to give that person that nudge of saying, hey, here's the priority list, and can you get back to work? Can you please try to address these? And you'll struggle because that person is mentally checked out, and it's just hard to deal with mentally checked out people, but I think it can be done. So those are my main reasons that I think sites come across as being problematic. Now, I can give you a ton of specific examples from my career, but I want to know if that would be helpful or not. If you think it would be helpful for me to put out a video like that, please list it down in the comments. If there's a specific bullet that you feel really resonated with you and you want me to dig into that particular point more, list that and just let me know. I'm happy to put out videos. I just want to make sure that my content is watched and that this channel continues to build and get more subscribers. So thank you for making it this far. Just a quick reminder again, if you haven't done so already, take a moment, smash that like button and subscribe to my channel. And from the city where there's a lot of mourning for not winning the National Football Championships, I bid you good night, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you.